Hi, everyone. This story was told to me by my mom. How it happened to her friend. Hey Reddit, I never thought I'd be the guy writing one of these posts, but here we are. I, 35M, had what I thought was a solid life, a decent job, a wife, 32F, I adored, and plans for the future. Turns out, my entire reality was built on a foundation of lies, and I didn't see it coming until it was too late. It all started when I landed what was supposed to be my dream job. I had been grinding for years in a dead-end position, barely making ends meet, when an old colleague tipped me off about an opening at his company. The pay was better, the benefits were great, and best of all, no more micromanaging boss breathing down my neck. I jumped at the chance. That's where I met him. Let's call him Chris, 40M. At first, he seemed like your typical corporate alpha, suave, charismatic, the kind of guy who walks into a room and everyone just listens. He wasn't my direct boss, but he was high enough up the food chain that his word carried weight. At work, he was the guy you wanted to impress. Turns out, he was also the guy you should never trust. My wife, Lena, had always been supportive of my career. Or at least, I thought she was. When I told her about the new job, she was thrilled. This is exactly what we needed, she had said, her eyes lighting up. That word stings now, knowing what I know. The first signs of trouble were small. At first, Lena started getting way more interested in my work than usual. She'd ask about my boss, my coworkers, the office culture. At the time, I chalked it up to normal curiosity. Hell, I was excited too. Then came the business dinners. Chris would host these after-work gatherings at high-end restaurants, team bonding events where everyone was encouraged to bring their partners. He had a way of making you feel like part of an exclusive club, like you needed to be there to succeed. So, of course, I brought Lena. That was my first mistake. So, there we were, at one of Chris's famous team bonding dinners. Fancy steakhouse, dim lighting, overpriced wine, the kind of place you only go to when someone else is footing the bill. Lena was loving it. She had always been good at socializing, way better than me. She slipped right into conversation with my coworkers like she had known them for years. But there was one person she really hit it off with, Chris. At first, I didn't think much of it. He was smooth with everyone, after all. But the way Lena laughed at his jokes that weren't even that funny, felt off. And when he spoke, she leaned in just a little too much, her eyes locked on his like he was saying the most interesting thing in the world. I pushed it down. I was overthinking it, right? Maybe I was just feeling insecure. Chris was a good-looking guy, successful, confident. It made sense that Lena would find him engaging. That didn't mean anything was happening. But then came the touching. At one point, Chris made some joke, something about the corporate world being just like a dysfunctional marriage. Oh, the irony, and Lena touched his arm as she laughed. A light touch. Brief. But enough to make my stomach twist. I tried to shake it off. Maybe I was being possessive. Maybe I was just tired. Maybe I was just making a big deal out of nothing. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted that night. And I had no idea just how deep this rabbit hole was about to go. After that night, something felt off, but I told myself I was imagining things. I mean, Lena and I had been together for almost a decade. She wasn't the type to cheat. And Chris? He was just my boss. He had no reason to cross that line. Right? Then the little things started piling up. Lena suddenly had a lot of questions about my work schedule, like, way more than before. When are you working late again? Does Chris come to the office every day, or does he work remote? Are there any more of those company dinners coming up? It wasn't just curiosity anymore. It was like she was planning something. And then she started dressing differently. Now, don't get me wrong, Lena had always been stylish. But this was different. It wasn't for me. It was for someone else. She started wearing more expensive perfume, the kind that lingered even after she left her room. She started putting extra effort into her hair and makeup on random days, not just when we had plans. And then came the biggest red flag of all: she stopped being as affectionate. We had always been a touchy couple, cuddling on the couch, quick kisses in the kitchen, holding hands when we went out. But suddenly, it felt like she was keeping me at arm's length. Like she didn't want to be too close. Like she was hiding something. At this point, I was spiraling. I kept telling myself I was being paranoid, but deep down, I knew. I knew something wasn't right. And I was about to find out just how wrong things really were. I wish I could say I confronted her right then and there. I wish I had the guts to ask, "Are you cheating on me?" But instead, I did what most people do in these situations: I ignored my instincts and looked for any explanation other than the obvious one. Maybe she was just stressed. Maybe she was feeling insecure. Maybe she was just going through a phase. Then, one night, my whole world cracked open. I had been working late at the office, big project, tight deadline. I texted Lena to let her know I'd be home around midnight. She responded instantly. "No problem. Get some rest. Love you." That should have been reassuring. But something about it felt off. The way she responded too quickly. The way she told me to get some rest like she already knew I'd be exhausted. On a gut feeling, I packed up early and headed home. The second I pulled into our driveway, my stomach dropped. There was another car parked outside. Chris's car. At first, I thought no. No way. It's gotta be a coincidence. Maybe he was meeting a client in the area? Maybe he was just... No. No more excuses. I walked up to my own front door with my hands shaking. My own house felt foreign, like I was about to step into a horror movie where I was the last to realize I was the victim. I opened the door. The house was dark, except for the dim glow from our bedroom. And then I heard it. A laugh. Her laugh. Followed by a low murmur of a voice I knew wasn't mine. That was the moment I knew. I had been played. And the worst part? I was about to see it with my own eyes. I stood frozen in the doorway, my brain refusing to process what my ears already knew. The soft murmur of voices. The occasional rustle of sheets. The unmistakable sound of my wife's giggle. My blood ran ice cold. I could have turned around. I could have walked away and pretended I never heard anything. But I was done lying to myself. With my heart hammering in my chest, I stepped forward, one slow, deliberate step after another, down the hallway that suddenly felt too long. The door to our bedroom was slightly open. Just enough to see the dim light filtering through. Just enough to make out the silhouettes moving inside. And then, Chris's voice. "God, I wish you were mine." My stomach dropped. Lena's voice came next, soft and breathless. "You know I'd leave him if I could." I don't even remember making the decision to push the door open, but suddenly, I was standing there. Chris. In my bed. With my wife. For a second, nobody moved. Lena gasped and yanked the covers up like she could somehow erase what I had just seen. Chris just stared at me, his face a mixture of shock and, was that amusement? Like he couldn't believe I had actually caught them. Then, finally, Lena spoke. "It's not what it looks like." I actually laughed. A sharp, bitter sound that didn't feel like it came from me. "Really? Because it looks like my boss is screwing my wife in my bed." Silence. I don't know what I expected: apologies? Guilt? Begging? But instead, Chris had the audacity to smirk. "Look, man," he started. But I was done listening. I don't even remember making the decision to move, but suddenly, I was across the room, grabbing Chris by the collar before he could get another smug word out. I wanted to hit him. God, I wanted to hit him. But I didn't. Not because he didn't deserve it, but because I knew that if I did, I'd be the one who lost everything. Instead, I shoved him back, hard. He stumbled, nearly tripping over his own damn pants, which were still tangled around his ankles. If the situation weren't so utterly devastating, it might have been funny. Lena let out this pathetic little gasp, like I was the problem here. Like I had done something wrong by walking into my own damn bedroom. Chris straightened his shirt, regaining his composure way too fast for my liking. Then, he had the nerve to smirk again. You should have seen this coming, man. I saw red. Lena started crying. Big, dramatic sobs. It's not like that, please, just let me explain. Explain? I cut her off. Explain what, Lena? That you've been screwing my boss behind my back? That you had the nerve to do it in our bed? She opened her mouth, but I wasn't interested in her excuses. Chris, the arrogant bastard, chuckled. That was it. That was the moment I snapped. I grabbed his expensive, designer jacket off the chair and hurled it straight at his face. Get the F** out of my house. For a second, he looked like he might argue. But then, maybe realizing he had pushed his luck, he snatched his shoes and his keys and strolled out like this was just another Tuesday night for him. I turned to Lena, my voice low, shaking with fury. You have 2 minutes to pack a bag and leave. Her eyes widened. Wait, what? No. We need to talk about this. I didn't yell. I didn't argue. I just pointed at the door. 2 minutes, Lena. Or I start throwing your S** onto the lawn. ****. Lena just stared at me, her mouth opening and closing like she was struggling to find the right words. Like there was anything she could say that would undo what she'd just done. But I was past the point of caring. She sniffled, wiping at her eyes. You're not even going to let me explain? I laughed, sharp, bitter. Explain what, Lena? That you didn't mean for this to happen? That it was a mistake? I shook my head. You had a million chances to stop this, but you didn't. Her face crumpled. 2 minutes, I cut her off. Or I swear to God, I'll throw your crap out myself. She must have finally realized I wasn't bluffing, because she spun around and started shoving clothes into a duffel bag. Her hands were shaking so badly she kept dropping things. I didn't help. I just stood there, arms crossed, watching the woman I thought I'd spend my life with scramble to leave. She tried one last time as she zipped up the bag. Please. Just let me stay tonight. We can talk in the morning. I stepped back, pointing at the door. Out. Tears streamed down her face, but I felt nothing. She grabbed her bag and hesitated. For a moment, I thought she might try to hug me, like muscle memory kicked in. But I took a step back, and whatever hope she had crumbled. She walked out. And just like that, my marriage was over. I locked the door behind her. And then, for the first time that night, I let myself break. The second the door shut behind Lena, the weight of everything crashed down on me. My legs felt like they might give out, so I just slid down onto the floor, back against the door, staring at nothing. I was numb. No anger. No sadness. Just nothing. I should have been raging, throwing things, punching a hole in the wall, something. But all I could do was sit there, feeling the empty space where my marriage used to be. At some point, I must have gotten up because I found myself in the kitchen, staring at a bottle of whiskey on the counter. I wasn't much of a drinker, but that night, I poured myself a glass, downed it in one go, and then poured another. I don't know how long I sat there, but at some point, my phone buzzed. Lena. I almost ignored it. But something in me, curiosity, stupidity, whatever, made me pick it up. Lena, please, let's talk. I never wanted to hurt you. I stared at the screen, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. There were 100 things I wanted to say. But in the end, I just powered off my phone and poured another drink. I'd deal with her tomorrow. Or maybe I wouldn't deal with her at all. I woke up the next morning with a splitting headache and a hollow feeling in my chest. The whiskey hadn't helped, if anything, it made the situation feel even more surreal. For a few blissful seconds, I forgot. I rolled over in bed, expecting to feel Lena beside me. But the sheets were cold. the other pillow untouched. And then it all came flooding back. The betrayal. The fight. The look on her face as she walked out the door. I sat up, groaning, rubbing my temples. My phone was still off, exactly where I had left it on the kitchen counter. Against my better judgment, I turned it back on. Big mistake. The second the screen lit up, the messages poured in. Lena, please talk to me. Lena, I know you're hurt, but we need to talk about this. Lena, it wasn't just about him. It was about us. That last message sent a fresh wave of anger through me. Us? She was really trying to spin this like it was somehow my fault? But it wasn't just Lena blowing up my phone. There were texts from my coworkers. And then, my stomach dropped. A text from Chris. Chris, hey man, I get that you're upset, but let's be adults about this. No need to make things messy at work. Messy at work? That's when it hit me. This wasn't just about my marriage. This was about my job. And I had no idea just how much worse things were about to get. Chris's text sent a jolt of adrenaline through me. No need to make things messy at work? Was this guy serious? I should have ignored him. Blocked his number. But instead, I fired back. Me, messy? You F ***ed my wife, and you're worried about things being messy, ***. He read the message instantly. No reply. That told me everything I needed to know. I was already halfway through writing another text, something brutal, something that would hurt, when my phone buzzed with an email. From HR. My stomach twisted as I opened it. Subject, urgent meeting, 10 a.m. ***. I checked the time. 8:47 a.m. Chris had already moved against me. I didn't even shower. I threw on the first clothes I could find, grabbed my keys, and drove to the office. My hands were clenched so tight around the steering wheel that my knuckles were white. By the time I got there, I barely remembered the drive. The HR rep, Samantha, was waiting for me in the conference room. Her face was unreadable, but I knew. I knew. She gestured for me to sit. I didn't. What's this about? I asked, my voice tight. She sighed, folding her hands on the table. There's been a complaint. I let out a harsh laugh. A complaint? Let me guess, Chris? She hesitated. Chris has expressed concerns about a hostile work environment. I actually laughed this time. A sharp, humorless sound. He's screwing my wife, and I'm the one making the office hostile? Samantha looked uncomfortable. Look, I understand that this is a difficult situation. Do you? I snapped. Because it feels like I'm the only one losing here. She hesitated again. The decision has already been made. The room went silent. I felt the words coming before she even said them. We're letting you go, effective immediately. Just like that, I lost everything. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. We're letting you go. It didn't register right away. My brain was scrambling, trying to make sense of it. Wait, what? I finally managed. You're firing me? For what? Because Chris? Samantha didn't meet my eyes. She just slid a paper across the table. Please sign here. It's your severance package. I stared at the paper for a few seconds, my mind a blur. Severance package? There was no way. I knew this was coming. Chris had covered his tracks well. But to lose my job this quickly? It felt like the ground was shifting beneath me. The thought crossed my mind that I should fight it. That I should call a lawyer. But I knew it was pointless. Chris had power at the company. He was untouchable. And I was nothing. I signed the paper, my hand trembling. The weight of it hit me the second I stood up to leave. My world, which had seemed so stable just days ago, had been reduced to rubble in less than 48 hours. I walked out of the conference room, not even looking back. My office was empty. My desk, a memory. The people I'd worked alongside for years? Gone, just like that. I took the elevator to the lobby, walked out into the cold air, and I just stood there. What now? I had nothing. No job. No wife. No reason to stay in the city. I pulled my phone from my pocket, my finger hovering over Lena's contact. I didn't know what I was hoping for. Maybe a tearful apology? Maybe her begging me to come back? But the phone buzzed before I could do anything. It was a text from Chris. Chris, you've made a scene. I think it's best we keep things professional from now on. Professional. The audacity of this guy. He was the one who'd destroyed my life, and he was talking about keeping it professional. I wanted to smash my phone against the pavement. Instead, I turned it off. I spent the next few days in a haze. It wasn't just that I had lost my job, it was everything else that came crashing down all at once. The anger had settled into a heavy sadness. I thought back to all the things Lena had said over the years, all the promises she had made. And now? It felt like none of it mattered. She wasn't coming back. Chris wasn't going to fix anything. I tried to keep myself busy. I called a few friends to see if I could stay with them for a while, but it was hard to look anyone in the eye. What was I supposed to say? That my wife had cheated on me with my boss and I was now unemployed? It was humiliating. I ended up crashing at a friend's place for a few days, just long enough to clear my head, or so I thought. I stayed inside, only leaving to get groceries or pick up a few job applications. I kept thinking about what had happened, about Lena's betrayal, Chris's smug face, and the way my whole life had unraveled in the blink of an eye. I tried to distract myself with job hunting, but it wasn't going well. Not surprisingly, after a few days, the bills started piling up, and the weight of my situation began to sink in. I hadn't even begun to figure out how to deal with the emotional side of everything. But then, just when I thought it couldn't get any worse, I got a call from Chris. My stomach twisted. I let it ring for a few seconds before answering. What now? I said, keeping my voice as calm as I could. He didn't waste time with small talk. I'm going to be honest with you, man, he said, his tone surprisingly flat. I've already talked to HR, and we've decided to part ways with you, officially. I blinked. What? You already fired me, Chris. What the hell else is there? He sighed like I was the one who didn't get it. Look, we need to make this clean. You're going to get a severance check, but I need you to sign some papers. You know the drill. I felt a surge of frustration rise in my chest, but I stopped myself. I had no choice. Chris had everything tied up neatly. Fine, I muttered, my voice strained. Send me the papers. I hung up without another word. And just like that, I was officially erased from the company. The next few days were a blur. I signed the papers, took the severance check, and tried to stay afloat. But nothing could distract me from the sinking feeling in my stomach every time I woke up. Every time I passed by a newsstand and saw ads for jobs I couldn't apply for. Every time I ran into a former coworker who shot me that pitying look. It was humiliating. I spent my days applying for any job I could find, and my nights wallowing in self-pity, staring at the ceiling, wondering where I went wrong. How did I miss all the signs? Was I that much of a fool? But then, one evening, I got a call from an unknown number. I didn't recognize the number, but something made me pick up. Hello? A voice I didn't recognize came through the line. Hey, is this your name? Yeah, who's this? The voice hesitated for a second, then spoke again. This is Kelsey. I'm Chris's wife. I froze. This wasn't happening. I could barely form words. What do you want? Her voice was shaky. I know this is going to sound crazy, but I need to talk to you. I didn't want to hear anything she had to say. Not after everything. But something in her voice made me pause. Maybe it was the desperation. Maybe it was the faint crack in her tone. Fine, I said, though I couldn't hide the bitterness in my voice. What is it? She took a deep breath before speaking. I know what Chris did to you. I know about the affair. I didn't know what to say. My brain couldn't process it. Kelsey continued, her voice barely above a whisper. I don't know what to do. I don't even know how to explain, but I found out. He's been lying to me, and he's been lying to you. I cut her off. Why are you telling me this? What do you want from me? There was a long pause. I want you to know you're not the only one hurt here. I want you to know that I don't forgive him either. The words hit me like a punch. You don't forgive him? I repeated, almost incredulously. Why the hell should I care about that? Kelsey seemed to gather herself before responding. Because you need to know that you're not alone in this. I don't want anything from you, but maybe we can figure out how to deal with him together. It wasn't what I expected. But at that moment, a part of me wanted to hear her out. Maybe I wasn't as alone as I thought. Kelsey and I spent the next few days planning. She was surprisingly organized, and it didn't take long for us to start gathering evidence. Texts, emails, photos, anything that would prove Chris wasn't the good guy he tried so hard to appear as. It felt like a long shot. Part of me was terrified that Chris would somehow manage to silence us, that his power would crush whatever we tried to expose. But I kept reminding myself this wasn't just for me. This was for Kelsey too. She was just as much a victim of his manipulation as I was. We worked late into the nights, piecing together everything we could. And then, we did the thing I never thought I'd be able to do, we sent it all to HR. The fallout was swift. Chris was suspended pending investigation, and soon after, he was fired. The company was shaken. People started whispering. And, as expected, Chris fought back. He tried to spin the story, to claim we were both lying, but it didn't work. In the end, his career was over. But more than that, I was finally free. Kelsey and I stayed in touch through the whole process. We didn't become best friends, but there was a sense of solidarity between us. I'd never been able to talk to anyone about this with the same level of honesty. She knew exactly what I'd been through, and vice versa. As for Lena? I never heard from her again. She moved on, and I guess I did too. I never got an apology. I never got the closure I wanted. But over time, I realized I didn't need it. I learned that sometimes, the people you trust the most are the ones who can hurt you the most. And when that happens, you've got two choices: stay stuck in the mess, or take control and make sure it doesn't define you. For the first time in a long time, I feel like I'm in control. My life is mine again. So, to anyone reading this, I just want to say, don't let anyone, whether it's your spouse, your boss, or anyone else, make you feel small. You deserve better. And if they can't see that, you walk away. And if you have to, you fight back. The end.